Hi everyone, I'm Logan, the 64th Gear Jammer Skeele, founder of Advantage Diecast, and I'm opening up the Southside Warehouse on the last episode of Toy Talk for 2020. Today's review is on my 7-part series on making a diecast toy. This series was very early in the channel, starting with episode 5, What is Diecasting? How are diecast cars and trucks made? Part 1. Let's roll the film.
We're going to talk about what diecasting is, how it is used in making model cars and trucks, why it is so expensive, and why it is becoming obsolete in making model cars and trucks. But diecasting is the metal casting process that is characterized by forcing molten metal under high pressure into a steel mold cavity. The mold cavity is created using 2 or more steel dies closed together under pressure. This picture over here is a simple 2-part die-cast mold. Depending on the complexity of the model, there could be many more parts to it, but most models are made using a simple 2-piece die-cast mold.
Now that we have cast our car's body, we need to paint it and add on the detail markings with either decals or pad printing. I also covered this in episode 5.
Powder coating is where they electrostatically apply a powder paint onto the model, and then it is heated in order to melt the paint onto the model. This is a cool process to watch if you can ever get a chance to see it. What they do is they have a big gun that's spraying out this powder up and down all over the model, and powder's falling everywhere. But it's not wasted. They go in, they sweep the powder up, and they throw it back in the hopper to paint the next batch. We saw this when we toured the Scale Models toy factory there in Dyersville, Iowa, when he was still making toys. At the time, I think they were painting New Hollands because it was New Holland blue powder that was everywhere, but it wasn't going to be wasted. The pad printing process is pretty cool. The model is put into a carrier, and this carrier holds the model in the exact spot where they want the machine to put the graphics.
Die casting and painting the parts. The first 2 steps and a long list to get that model made and delivered to you. Next, we're going to go on in episode 6, are all these machines needed to make one diecast car? How diecast cars and trucks are made, part 2.
First, we have the idea that comes into our heads. Then we need to get a computer. Then we need a 3D scanner. Then we need something to do rapid prototyping, such as a 3D printer. Then we need a CNC milling machine in order to mill out the molds. Then we need a heat treating machine to heat treat those molds. Next, we need another machine that's a high pressure injection machine that injects metal. That way we can die cast our model. Then we need a machine that will go out and round out and smooth off all those sharp edges on our model. Then we need a spray booth for painting. We need an airbrush and the equipment to run the airbrush. We need a pad printing machine and the necessary people to operate it. At my count right now, we're at 10 people, and we haven't even finished making all of our parts. What's next is we need a plastic injection machine. This machine is to make all of our plastic parts.
Since I listed out all of the machines that are needed, including the new plastic injection machine, I'll show you an illustration of the plastic injection machine working.
Now, this process is very much like the high pressure injection process. Plastic is melted into a molten state. A hydraulic ram closes the mold, compressing it together. The more pressure there, the less seam on the parts is visible. Then, the molten plastic is forced under pressure into the mold. The mold is cooled, which solidifies the plastic. And once the plastic is solidified, you have a nice hard part. The mold is open and the part is ejected. All automatic. This process is pretty simple. It's just basically you punch in the number of parts you need and you walk away and let the machine work, and it'll crank out that many parts as fast as it can.
Episode 7, Wheels and Tires. What good would a model be without them? How diecast cars and trucks are made, part 3. It is the logical next step. We have painted parts and all of our plastic parts, so it's time to make the wheels and the tires.
Today, though, what we're going to talk about is wheels and tires. Those are the parts that really set off our model, and whether they're a $5 model or a $1 model. These tires and wheels make a big difference. Wheels and tires and how they are made. Now, for the model world, there's two different types of wheels and tires. There's the first type, which is used on inexpensive, highly mass-produced models, particularly Hot Wheels and their 97-cent cards. These are where they inject the plastic wheel and the tire together as one piece. The more expensive models, they've gone to using a separate tire and wheel. But this takes an extra step in assembling the two together, so it adds a little more cost down the road to every model. And here is an example of our chrome wheels and black painted wheels. They really stand out, don't they, versus the other style where it's plastic and all plastic wheels. We were making a run of 1,000 pieces of a standard semi-truck and trailer. That's an 18-wheeler. That means we'd have to cast out 18,000 rubber tires, 18,000 wheels, 5,000 axles, and then assemble all of this.
Wasn't part 3 exciting? We need wheels and tires to go with our parts, but we still aren't finished making parts yet. Next, we need windows for our model, and that is covered in episode 8. Vacuform clear plastic to create glass for models. How die-cast cars and trucks are made, part 4.
What that is making the glass parts that are needed for our models. Windshields, front and side glass, and back glass are no exception to this. They have to have a mold made too. To manufacture these parts, we have two choices of machines that we can use. Our first choice is this plastic injection machine over here, and we've used these before. Or we can use the vacuum forming machine over here. Inexpensive mass-produced cars and trucks such as Hot Wheels, they'll cast the windshield, the side windows, the back windows all as one piece, just like this.
That was the mass production way to make windows. The second way I'm going to talk about is for making windows for low production run models.
What is thermoforming? And the second one is, what is vacuum forming? How does this process work? Believe it or not, the air around you is used as a tool. We heat a sheet of plastic to a pliable forming temperature. Then we remove the air, forming a vacuum underneath that plastic sheet. Air pressure pushes on the outside of the plastic sheet. Now, the vacuum formed windows will give our models a super crystal clear glass window for added realism.
Yay! We have our bodies, wheels, tires, plastic parts, and windows. We are ready to build. Oh, we still need headlights and taillights. Episode 9, Diecast Model Headlights and Taillights, How Are Diecast Cars and Trucks Made, Part 5, talks about making and coloring these parts.
On more expensive model cars and trucks, the manufacturers will use individual headlights and other lights on these models. These parts will be made out of clear plastic or colored plastic in a plastic injection machine. If you'll remember, this machine can only use one color at a time. This method results in individual parts called jewels. Each of these individual parts then has to be placed on the model by hand during assembly. Model light bars are just like the real light bars, they're cast in clear plastic. Once again, our skilled painters are called upon to paint on the red and blue colors by hand. With the advent of micro LED lights, model manufacturers now can add illumination to their models that they couldn't before. If you remember before, the only models that really had illumination were electric trains. They used a grain of wheat bulb in the headlight, maybe one in the cab and in the passenger cars. Construction equipment and semi-trucks are probably the best examples of illuminated RC vehicles made. The most elaborate ones will have all the lights found on the real model illuminated in the scale model.
All of our parts are made, but we still aren't ready for final assembly. Episode 10, Diecast Model Packaging and Boxes. How Are Diecast Cars and Trucks Made? Part 6 talks about the last piece we need before efficient assembly line manufacturing can begin. Packaging is the final need to be addressed if our assembly line is to work smoothly from raw materials all the way up to the finished product. Now, there are several ways to package our product. We can use a blister packaging to protect our product. What is blister packaging? Well, blister packaging is a type of packaging produced in a vacuum forming machine by heating a sheet of clear plastic to create a bubble, also known as a blister, that completely encloses our model. Packaging begins with an artist concept of what the box should look like when it is finished. First, printing plates are made for the press. Then, a die must be made to cut the box out of the hardboard stock. Next, a printing press prints the artwork onto the box. Then it is sent on down to the die cutter where the box is cut out of the hardboard stock. Finally, the flat, cut-out hardboard box is sent on to a machine that glues and folds the box together. This gives us a finished box. Well, almost. If a plastic window is required for the box, that will be made and then glued into the box during that gluing process. Advantage Diecast began with the inner blister dimensions, and then they created a window box template from those dimensions. The artist then drew on the design onto that template, he colored it, and finally that artwork was sent on to the box manufacturer to be printed and cut out. And right here, this is what you can see is a picture of the artwork before it gets cut. While we're about boxes, I might as well go on and cover shipping containers since they need to be printed and made too. Parts are made. Boxes are made. Finally, it's time to assemble our model. Let's get on to it in episode 11, Diecast Model, Final Assembly Line, How Diecast Cars and Trucks Are Made, Part 7. Assembly is the most labor-intensive part of building a model. The different parts require different methods of assembly. The model will then pass through many different hands before it is finished. Large production run models are built along a movable assembly line, very much like real cars. Another way that models are assembled is a system where each station puts on its parts, but instead of using a movable belt to go between stations, the person puts the parts on mini models at his station, then puts the partially assembled models into plastic trays, which are then carried to the next station. The last assembly method is reserved for the most limited of production runs. This is a method where all the parts are put on at one station by one person. Hey guys, what we got here is the simplest car that you can ever go on and put together. This is a Hot Wheels. It's a 4-part car, and I'm going to show you the basic assembly. You start with the chassis. You pick the interior piece up. You put it on top of the chassis. You put the window on top, and then you put the whole thing inside the body. And you have an instant car. And then it goes off to the cold staking machine where these two metal pegs are crushed down around the body and you have an instant car. That was a quick recap of my 7-part series on how to make a diecast model car or truck. To watch the full series, just go to the playlist with the link above or down in the description below. Also, please help support this channel by sponsoring me over on Patreon. Over there, you will get access to very exclusive content and behind-the-scenes footage. So, sign up with the link in the description below to keep this channel growing in the new year. Guys, this is the last video of 2020, and I want to wish everyone a happy new year, and may 2021 be far better than 2020. I'm Logan, the 64th Gear Jammer Skeele, and I'm closing up Advantage Diecast's warehouse doors on the last episode of 2020. I will be back in the warehouse on Tuesday after a short New Year's vacation with Toy Talk's first episode of 2021. Happy New Year, everyone!